For the past 2 months, I spent much of my time digging through all and any beta, prototype, or unused content in the Silent Hill series. In my time of research and studying, I found content that I never would have possibly imagined to be found that would only add more fuel to the conversation for many years to come, which is why today, I want to dedicate much of my time to compiling all the previous videos I made into one complete retrospective of all the cut content in the Silent Hill series. This will remove intros and outros of each respective video to provide a smooth, seamless experience for you, the viewer. As always, chapters will be provided in the description below if you need to take a break or are interested in one specific topic. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the complete history of Silent Hill cut content. Much of the cut content that is found in Silent Hill 1 is sourced from the official US PlayStation Magazine demo disc number 16. It allows the player to play the opening sequence titled Opening, with the nightmare section where Harry encounters the otherworld for the very first time, and then the cutscene of Sybil Bennett introducing herself to Harry in Cafe 522. After, we then have the Battle mode, which serves as the gameplay section, allowing experimentation with the inventory with such items as weapons, health, and other miscellaneous features that accompany Harry. Much of the gameplay section serves as an introduction to Midwich Elementary School, where you would normally progress throughout the final version of the game. However, the minor changes here are how you progress throughout the school itself, and then eventually having to escape. What's fascinating about this specific demo itself is the game files that are found. In the opening screen for the demo, there is a placeholder image with a background of flowers, accompanied by Japanese text that states, "This game contains violent scenes and depictions of grotesque situations." There is an early version of the 11th Street Doghouse memo, which has a black background and green text. In the final version, the background of the image shows pavement with bloodstains, alongside with the 11th Street Doghouse memo, with blue text on torn paper. The "To School" memo contains a black background with a piece of lined paper that has the text "To School" in red crayon, along with a black background. The final version features the same memo appearance, with the exception of having the pavement as the background itself. In the same alleyway with the "To School" memo, you can find Cheryl's sketchbook titled Drawing Block. In the early version, it featured the sketchbook with a black background and Japanese text on the top right of the image. The final version is much the same, although it has a detailed background, which is the pavement floor. In Midwich Elementary School, at the reception area, you can find a desk with a book containing writing and blood. In the demo version, you can see two images that are references to the films Pulp Fiction and Die Hard. In the final version, those images would be unused and replaced with stock images of a waterfall and of mountains. In the school laboratory, Harry would need to find an item called Chemical. In the demo version, it had a background image that accompanied the item itself, along with other chemicals on the shelf. Harry's flashlight beams its light on the item and the surrounding area itself. However, this background image would be later cut in the final version of the game. While on the rooftop of Midwich Elementary School, you would need to find the rubber ball to insert into a hole that would flush water down the drain to receive the classroom key. In the demo version, there is an early image of the rubber ball with rough textures of the water drain, along with the text "Dummy Still" in the top left corner of the image. This image would later be finalized in the final version with a more detailed background of the rubber ball and Harry's flashlight beaming on it. There's an image with a gray background with text in red that reads "Dummy Still" on the top left of the image and a green transparent flag on the bottom right hand corner. The next image shows a green background with a white transparent cross to the left and a Japanese text on the right that reads "More Light." Another placeholder graphic shows another green background with blue Japanese text on the top that reads "Death is the end of every worldly sore." This is a quote from the novel Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. On the bottom of the placeholder image, it has a Japanese text that states "One image." The Game Over screen had a green background with red text that simply reads "Game Over" displayed. The item screen had the words "Item" displayed at the top with a real-life graphic of a Japanese dish called chicken katsu. The following images that are blurred on screen are nude photos of Japanese women. which I'm not going to show for obvious reasons, which were used as placeholders for the save and load screen in the options menu screen. Early renders of Alessa Gillespie, Cheryl Mason, and finally Lisa Garland hold some minor differences in their appearance compared to their final designs. After completing the opening sequence in the demo disc, you get leftovers of images that read, "To be continued," and shortly after, "Coming soon," with an image of Dahlia Gillespie inside Balkan Church as she stares ominously at the player. Upon completing the battle mode and successfully escaping Midwich Elementary School, you get a leftover image that reads, "To be continued," with a corpse in a wheelchair in the other world. The Konami IP, Track and Field, known as Hyper Olympic in Japan, released a 3D update of a previous version released only in Japanese arcades called Hyper Athlete for the PlayStation. This update would be called International Track and Field, which would be released globally in North America, Europe, and Japan. Much of the textures used in International Track and Field were translated into some of the textures in Silent Hill. In the game files, there are a couple of leftover textures in a folder named Test. These files show textures of hidden doodles from presumably the developers that are of either smiling faces or text in Japanese that are inserted as notes for the staff. This file, SH1THR2001F, contains Japanese text that reads, "It's a map." This next file, SH1THR3071F, contains very faint text that reads either sign or billboard. There are approximately 9 unused monsters found within the game files. All of these unused monsters have distinctive qualities in their appearance that are seen as more realistic in terms of real-world design that are completely different from the final monsters we see in-game. The file BTFY, or Butterfly, is of a butterfly-like monster that resembles much of the Fotstinger that you fight atop the post office in Otherworld Central Silent Hill. The file EL, presumably short for Manta Ray, given the appearance of the monster, resembles much of a real-life manta ray. Interestingly, the manta ray is located in the test files, possibly as a placeholder to test out the animations in physics, yet never intended to be an actual potential enemy. The file FRG, or Frog, depicts a monster-like frog with 2 arms in the front and 2 legs in the back. The file MKY, or Monkey, shows a depiction of a monkey with a bloodied mouth and a bruised face with sharp tendrils at the ends of their arms that are also covered with bloodstains. The file OST, or Ostrich, is a huge creature of blood on its mouth and feet. Its most notable quality is considerably the tongue that pokes at the player to deal damage. The file SNK, or Snake, has features resembling a snake. The only notable quality is that of its tongue, which functions similarly to the previously seen ostrich, which also shares a similar function when it comes to dealing damage to the player. The file CHK, or Chicken, depicts a heavily contorted chicken with qualities that resemble that of a newborn hatchling. Interestingly, the chicken has the most applied animations to its model out of all the unused monsters, as it was possibly intended to be featured as a boss fight, given its large, massive size. While the chicken would be scrapped, this would be repurposed for the Air Screamer, as it serves notable similarities, albeit with wings. The file BIG, or Big, is straightforward, as it is a big and large model of a monster that potentially would have served as a boss at some point, given its sheer size and scale. However, it's noticeably lacking in lots of qualities, only supporting a basic texture model, and only having one animation where it disappears completely. Lastly, the file SPD, or Spider, is an unfinished model of presumably a spider given the model's rig, containing 6 legs that are very reminiscent of a spider. Unfortunately, there's only rough-looking animations, but no actual model for the spider itself. The monster, Grey Child, an occurring enemy seen in the opening nightmare and the Midwich Elementary School section in-game, had quite an extensive development history when it came to conceptualizing and finalizing the monster. In the first phase, it depicted a childlike monster with human-like skin and black beady eyes with a mouth. In the second phase, it still had a childlike appearance with human-like skin, although the eyes are now removed, only supporting the mouth. The third design would be the final version of the Great Child that bears lots of similar resemblance to the previous design, although now supports grey-like skin and a smaller head on its model. The reason why the Great Child went through many redesigns is due in part to having human-like and childlike qualities that wouldn't have passed censorship laws in specific countries or regions globally. Supporting this is also the fact that the player needs to use firearms or melee weapons against the Great Child. On the topic of the Great Child, they had an early running animation that saw them skipping towards Harry when wanting to attack and deal damage. The final version shows a lack of a running animation and rather the Great Child slowly walking towards Harry. The larval stalker also had a human-like and childlike appearance featuring skin on its model. Much like the beta version of the Great Child, it too went through a heavy revision to remove any and all appearance that resembles that of a human-looking child. The final version of the larval stalker would support a transparent appearance that sees them as a pacifist type of enemy that can't deal damage to the player, nor the player dealing any damage. The beta model of Harry Mason was drastically overhauled compared to the final version. Originally, Harry supported a green sweater as opposed to his iconic brown leather jacket. The beta model also had rough and early animations that are either limited in the model's movement or very experimental to see the possibilities and restrictions that the developers can work with. Speaking of Harry Mason, there are a couple of unused animations that didn't make it into the final game. There's an animation where Harry's seen doing a karate chop hand motion that presumably would have been an attack animation towards an enemy. Another unused animation is Harry running sideways in either a left or right direction. Finally, Harry has an unused idle animation where he is seen crossing his arms as he waits impatiently. An early beta model of Sybil exists, although the only notable difference here is in the face and hair texture. The puppet nurse and the puppet doctor had unused beta designs compared to their final counterparts. Typically, there are 3 variations of the respective puppet nurse and puppet doctor, usually seeing a difference in the color of their clothing appearance or facial features and hairstyle. The same is no different with the beta puppet nurses and beta puppet doctors. The takeaway here is that many of the face models in the beta version look far more detailed compared to the final version, which is less detailed. Interestingly, there were earlier beta models that featured a similar looking nurse, but the parasite on the back of the respective nurse or doctor was far smaller in size. An early mock-up of a 3D map conceptualizing the town of Silent Hill is found in the game files. This early build of the town was most likely used as a reference to demonstrate an idea of the town's atmosphere and environment, as well as the size of the player model when roaming the streets of Silent Hill. Much of these early mock-ups of the 3D models in the locations explored throughout the game would actually go unused, yet still exist in the final game itself. For example, if we were to use the Silent Hill level viewer, a mod that ports the 3D maps from the game into the Unity engine, we can access the first-person camera and have free mobility to roam each level. Here, we can see that in the level, Midwich Elementary School, there are a couple of unused maps that were left in the game. The same is also applied to Alchemilla Hospital when exploring out of bounds of the map, with unused 3D models that were textured but scrapped and incomplete. Finally, an unused room with furniture, picture frames, and a symbol of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ is also found in the game files. The difference from the prior 3D models is that this room is noticeably finished with textures in its detail. There's an unused FMV of Cheryl Mason screaming. However, this FMV is an early iteration of the cutscene scene with Harry Mason finding the multiple TV monitors in the Otherworld Silent Hill Town Center. The difference here is that the final version has a black and white overlay with static effects added. In the resort area, Harry can enter a building called Annie's Bar, where he encounters a mumbler attacking Michael Kaufman, saving Kaufman in the process. After this exchange between the two, Harry can undergo an optional side quest that is important to acquire the Good Plus ending. At some point, Harry will end up in the garage of the motel to meet Kaufman once again. What's important about this particular encounter is that in the final version, after Kaufman leaves, Harry has lines that aren't voiced.
Unless you want to die, keep your mind on business. Got it?
However, in the trade demo, a review copy of Silent Hill has Harry's lines that are fully voiced.
Unless you want to die, keep your mind on business. Got it?
This guy's gotta be involved in a local drug racket. Man, is he pissed. In such a rush, too. That was probably dope in the bottle. Anyway, better let him do as he pleases. There's more than my life at stake.
There's an unused audio file titled first/coition.vab that has odd and mysterious sounds that appear seemingly innocent, with birds chirping, to slowly transitioning into moaning, to the sounds of someone eating, presumably flesh. Upon reaching Lakeview Hotel, James would take a moment to glance at the site of the Lakeview Hotel building, with a comment that he says to himself that reads, "This place hasn't changed at all in 3 years." YouTube user Silent Hill Database uncovered an unused audio file from an E3 demo build, where James reads the aforementioned text out loud, with voiced audio.
This place hasn't changed at all in 3 years.
Speaking of the E3 demo, a promotional build of Silent Hill 2 released to the public at E3 2001 on May 17th called Silent Hill 2 E3 2000 Trial Version contains a small portion of Brookhaven Hospital. This features a small playable segment from when you enter the hospital up to solving the Luis box puzzle and needing the elevator key to where the demo would end. While the sequence of events is very similar, there are notable differences featured in this demo which would be cut from the final version. At the beginning of the E3 trial version, you can find the common enemies spread out through each floor in Brookhaven Hospital, which are the lying figures, instead of the bubblehead nurses or mannequins. Typically, the bubblehead nurses and mannequins are the common enemies found in Brookhaven Hospital in the final version. The inventory originally had a different presentation compared to its final counterpart. When looking at the health screen, it shows an unused render of James looking off in the left direction, with a green color hue overlay indicating James' health status, which looks very similar to the Silent Hill 1 health screen, featuring Harry Mason, the protagonist of Silent Hill 1, in a similar pose. However, in the final version, the health screen would replace this render of James with a screenshot of the concurrent gameplay sequence the player is in, also with a color hue indicating your health status. The sound effects on the inventory screen of the E3 trial version sound much more industrial and metallic-like, similar to the sound effects of the inventory in Silent Hill 1. In comparison to the final version, which sounds more redefined and finalized. Finally, the ambience of the inventory screen in the E3 trial version sounds more disturbing and eerie. Compared to the inventory ambience in the final version, which is dependent on the environment the player is in. Other differences contained in the E3 trial version are the altered camera angles that are different here compared to the final version, and the ambience that is loud and bombastic on repeat compared to the more calm yet unsettling tone of Brookhaven Hospital in the final version. A prototype of Silent Hill 2, called version 0.10, is an early build that contains pre-release content that has minor differences when it comes to altered item placements, camera angles, UI elements, and more specifically, unused content. In the first encounter with the lying figure in the underpass, James equips the wooden plank and the radio. As the cutscene plays out, James is taken by surprise and says, "Oh," in version 0.10. In the final version, James doesn't make a comment upon first seeing the lying figure. After killing the lying figure, a cutscene will play where James will take out the radio he previously found to hear a voice muffled with static overlaying the message. This voice is purposely inaudible as it would reveal a major spoiler that would ruin the plot twist, revealed towards the end of the game when James realizes he killed Mary after watching the videotape. In version 0.10, the subtitles reveal this with the text stating, "Why did you kill me?"
What the?
In the final version, the aforementioned subtitle isn't used and instead replaced with illegible text.
What the?
Later on in Woodside Apartments, during the cutscene where James stumbles upon Pyramid Head abusing the mannequins and hides in the closet, in version 0.10, James would originally say to himself, "Shit," while cautiously looking at Pyramid Head while hiding in the closet.
Shit.
In the final version, James would keep to himself and not make a comment and instead stay quiet. Upon reaching Blue Creek Apartments, specifically room 209, you can walk out to the balcony to find the time of day was originally nighttime. In the final version, however, this would instead be daytime. On the topic of pre-releases, there would be pre-released promotional images of Silent Hill 2 advertised to the public that would contain content previously seen in these images but removed from the final game. In the hallways of Woodside Apartments, the Bubblehead nurses would have presumably made their first appearance in this area. However, the Bubblehead nurse would make their first appearance in Brookhaven Hospital. This image shows a frame of the cutscene where James first meets Laura as he tries to desperately grab the fire escape key, only for her to kick it away. What's interesting about this image specifically, however, is the big X that is marked on the wall, likely intended to be a visual indicator to the player to progress to the area where the key is located. This X would be removed from the final game. In the cutscene of Pyramid Head abusing the mannequins, he originally had his great knife equipped. This would be removed from the cutscene in the final version and instead make its first appearance in the first boss fight with Pyramid Head. In Blue Creek Apartments, Pyramid Head would have originally made an appearance in the hallways to stalk James and likely deal damage to him with his great knife. However, this appearance of Pyramid Head in the hallways would be cut from the final game. In this image of the cutscene before combating Pyramid Head in the boss fight with him, there originally was supposed to be a hand railing. This would not appear in the final game. Pyramid Head would have made an appearance to once again stalk and inflict damage upon James in the hallways of the basement floor in Lakeview Hotel. On the topic of Pyramid Head was originally supposed to be roaming the streets of Night Southvale, a section that you roam and explore for a brief period of time after exiting Brookhaven Hospital in order to reach Silent Hill Historical Society. The YouTube user, Shetty, would make a video featuring his findings that detail him explaining in the description how he found a section in version 0.10 with a save file that allows the player to see Pyramid Head roaming the streets of Night Southvale. Interestingly, version 0.10 would end before the boss fight with Pyramid Head in the apartment stairwell, deeming the section afterwards to be impossible to play. However, Shetty comments that he restored this specific section of Night Southvale where Pyramid Head is freely roaming the streets. Pyramid Head acts and functions as he normally does, typically walking slowly towards James with his great knife to then slash it downwards towards him to inflict damage. As to why Pyramid Head was cut from this section, it's likely that he was too easy to avoid given his slow walking animation and the size of the area itself, deeming it as unnecessary. Much of the earliest promotional images and trailers promoting Silent Hill 2 before its launch showed a different design for the logo. The early design of the logo used a font that was similar, if not the exact same, as the previous game, Silent Hill 1. The only minor difference here is the color change, which supports a green theme with its presentation. This logo would undergo an overhaul with its design to be finalized with the current logo we now know today. In the town of Southvale, specifically Neely Street, once had an earlier design that was different in terms of the exterior of the buildings compared to the final version. The early designs that can be seen in pre-release screenshots showing the street itself use the influence of the town of San Bruno, California as inspiration, not just the buildings themselves, but also the alleyways and the accompanying neighborhoods. These influences would be used by Team Silent, the developers behind Silent Hill 2, to gain an understanding and idea of how to depict an American small town when creating Southvale. However, in the final version, the exteriors of the buildings would be changed in appearance and be repurposed due to the possibility of Konami, publisher of Silent Hill 2, have to undergo legality issues as much of the early designs for Neely Street took influence from the town of San Bruno, which if left in, would result in image appropriation. Another possibility is the limitations of the memory amount on the PS2, sacrificing memory usage that instead could go towards other components in the gameplay. This can be supported by a quote stated in an interview with the producer, Akihiro Imamura. Imamura says the following in an IGN interview from August 17, 2001. A point which we are less happy about is that the memory amount is low. The memory amount is too low to place high quality character models and textures. We had to go through extra struggles to obtain these images. Akihiro Imamura. Before the production of Silent Hill 2 began, Konami unveiled a short 18-second demonstration demo featuring Sybil Bennett, a police officer who was a major character in Silent Hill 1. For all intent and purposes, the demo was made as a technical demonstration to give insight into the possibilities the PlayStation 2 engine could provide with its hardware. This demo shows a highly detailed Sybil Bennett player model walking around the interior of Cafe 5-2, to then finishing the demo presentation with her winking at the player and walking off in the distance. Upon reaching the Lakeview Hotel, James will encounter Laura in the Lakeshore restaurant. Here, Laura gives James a letter that was written by Mary. Initially, this letter was supposed to have an audio of Mary's voice reading the lines of the letter. This is the full audio of Laura's letter with Mary's voice.
My dearest Laura, I'm leaving this letter with Rachel to give to you after I'm gone. I'm far away now, in a quiet, beautiful place. Please forgive me for not saying goodbye before I left. Be well, Laura. Don't be too hard on the sisters. And Laura, about James. I know you hate him because you think he isn't nice to me. But please, give him a chance. It's true he may be a little surly sometimes, and he doesn't laugh much. But underneath, he's really a sweet person. Laura, I love you like my very own daughter. If things had worked out differently, I was hoping to adopt you. Happy 8th birthday, Laura. Your friend forever, Mary.
Once James reaches room 302, the hotel room he and his wife, Mary, both stayed in while on vacation in Silent Hill, sees James insert a videotape into a VHS player that reveals that he killed his wife with a pillow by suffocating her. Usually, no audio plays during this tape. However, there was originally cut audio that went unused that played audio of Mary's voice being muffled as she is shocked and struggles to breathe for air. Before I play the audio, for those with the faint of heart and easily disturbed by loud and unsettling noises, please skip to this timestamp below. In the Lost Memories, the art and music of Silent Hill, a DVD containing soundtracks, trailers, special videos, artwork, and other images from Silent Hill 1 through 3. has a specific section containing images of unused renders of the main characters from Silent Hill 2. James Sunderland had a character model that was very similar to the final design we see in-game, but he has a different hair color and hairstyle, closely resembling that of Harry Mason. Maria has mostly the same outfit presentation that is much like her final design, but the long sleeve shirt is white and the skirt is blue. Eddie originally had a gray beanie, a blue sweater, gray sweatpants, and black boots. Finally, Angela had a blue button-up jacket with blue denim jeans and white sneakers. Early concept images show the lying figure in different stages of its design that would have had red thigh-high boots, as well as a tongue appendage coming out from its mouth. The Bubblehead Nurse concept art shows an early design where there was originally a pole with an IV bag. Pyramid Head originally didn't have his pyramid-like helmet on his head, and rather had a plague-like doctor's mask instead in early concept designs. Finally, there is an unused monster that has a box-like body with a hole, along with numerous legs at the bottom. Interestingly, this design would make an appearance in the short film Fukuro by Masahiro Ito. A video by the YouTube user, Shetty, shows an unused test room discovered by a Silent Hill modder, Joki, that was intended to be a developer room to likely test out the texture mapping. The video goes into detail about how the dev room titled AP62.map contains no collisions, camera triggers, or shadows. The map contains a 3-story building with windows and a small forest behind it. On the counter of an ice cream stand found in Lakeside Amusement Park, there is a memo that is titled Dad's Memo. This is a memo written by Harry Mason, the adopted father of Heather Mason. In this memo, there is an early version with a difference in lighting and texture of the table surface, along with a translation with grammatical errors. In the early version, it reads the following: Daria said that girl is the devil, kidnapped for the sacrifice. I don't believe in my feeling sick. Is it because of the appearance? That girl resemble with Cheryl based on the picture in the basement of the hospital. In the final version, the render of the Dad's Memo has a different table surface and a correct translation. It reads, Dahlia's the one who said it, said that girl was a demon, that she took my daughter for a sacrifice. But it's not totally believable. I mean, appearances can be deceiving. After the cutscene where Heather first meets Vincent in the Otherworld Hilltop Center, you can find a memo titled Photo on Chair that contains a photo of Heather. 2 early versions of this photo exist that are similar in quality, although missing backgrounds to accompany the render. The first photo contains a picture of Heather with a black background. The second photo contains the same picture, although without a background. In the final version, there is the same photo of Heather, but with a fully rendered background. While in the Hilltop Center, there is a mini puzzle where Heather has to find a jack and a rope to descend to the first floor from an elevator shaft. 2 unused renders are missing the jack that opens the elevator doors. In the final version, the jack is included in both renders with the elevator shaft. In the Otherworld Hilltop Center, specifically the elevator, there is an early version of the elevator buttons with a brighter level of clarity compared to the final version, which is toned down in brightness and much darker. In room M4 of Brookhaven Hospital, there is a briefcase with a combination lock that needs to be solved to unlock the instant camera. There is an early version of the combination keys that have a higher brightness in the render, compared to the final version, which has a toned down brightness of the combination keys. In the My Bestsellers bookstore, located in Central Square Shopping Center, we'll see Heather having to collect the Shakespeare Anthology books. In the early version, the Shakespeare Anthology books contain a higher brightness on the render of the books and the numbers displayed on the side of the books for the keypad code. In the final version, the brightness is lowered down and the 0 is now located at the top, along with the other numbers instead of separately. Furthermore, the background render of the Shakespeare Anthology books puzzle contains an early version with a difference in brightness in its quality, along with a blue book titled Macbeth. In the final version, the render is toned down in its brightness and the Macbeth book has its title changed to the 59th Street Bridge Song, possibly changed to avoid confusion with the solution to the puzzle on harder difficulties. The file, Silent Hill 3_01 menu item, contains early texture sprites of the inventory items Heather can acquire throughout the game. The early version of the inventory items has placeholder numbers for the items that have not been given an item slot. Among these items are 3 unused items that were not used in the final version. Slot 21 contains a pair of blue batteries that were possibly considered for a puzzle but would go on to be unused. Interestingly, this item would be replaced by the OPS2 shirt Heather can wear as an unlockable outfit. Slot 23 contains an unused photograph of both Heather and Harry Mason. Slot 54 contains an early version of Dad's Notebook, which had a white cover as opposed to the final version, which had a brown cover with bloodstains. Before the release of Silent Hill 3, there was a demo at E3 2003 with a trial version for the public to play. This trial version contained a playable section of the Otherworld Hilltop Office Center. While this trial version doesn't contain differences compared to the final version, there is an unused graphic of the main menu, and upon completing the demo, an unused graphic with a blurb that reads, "Coming soon." There is an unused splash screen that contains a Team Silent with Comic Sans font that was used as a placeholder image for both the opening FMV video and the title screen. This unused splash screen can be re-enabled when inserting a code into the US version of the game files. An unused photo of Heather and Harry Mason was originally supposed to be found in Heather and Harry's apartment, which would be displayed on the wall. Interestingly, this photo does have a legible text that can be interacted with. It reads, "It's of Dad and me at Christmas. Looking at this makes me want to try even harder. I have to. I can't lose. They killed my dad, and they have to pay for it." This unused photo would have also been found in Heather's inventory, likely purposed for a specific use, but scrapped during development. An unused graphic of the title screen of Silent Hill 2 Director's Cut can be found in the game files, likely intended as an early placeholder for the Silent Hill 3 title screen. An early graphic of the first floor map for the Central Square Shopping Center can be found in the game files as well. There are approximately 8 test images found in the game files that are crude and rough textures with a yellow splatter in the background, along with a number outline of each file. The early version of Claudia's model appeared darker when it came to her skin tone, hair, and eyes. Her robe appears to be brighter as well. In the final version, her model appeared to have a brighter skin tone, eyes, and hair. Her robe, however, appears to be darker this time. The early version of Douglas's model had most of his appearance of the clothing appear brighter. In the final version, his clothing is toned down in its brightness to appear darker. An early version of Heather's model had a darker and more saturated color scheme. The flashlight Heather has equipped in her upper left vest pocket used to have a gray casing. To accompany the orange wristbands, there initially were black wristbands, resulting in a texturing error. In the final version, Heather's model would have her color scheme toned down in its saturation, the flashlight now had a green casing, and the black wristband texture error was fixed. The early version of Vincent's model contains prior adjustments to the shape of the arms, the size of his hands, and the color of his waistcoat. His final model would make these corrections and proper adjustments. In the early version of the Doublehead model, it had minor differences in the face, teeth, and wraps around its body. In the final version, this would be polished. The early version of the Missionary contained substantial differences compared to its final version. In the early model, it contained bloodstains that were missing on the front of the model, a different zipper pattern on the back of its clothing, and the head had a darker red color tone that made it easier to distinguish. An early unused model of Altiel contained differences that had white gloves matching those of Pyramid Head's gloves. This is likely due to both Altiel and Pyramid Head sharing the same model. Altiel's shoulders are missing the seal of Metatron, the back of his head is missing a mouth, and the shadow covering the right side of his face is missing, exposing a green-like pattern. In the cutscene where Heather first encounters the Closer, upon killing it, a deceased woman can be found that is a reused model of Angela Orozco, however, slightly modified. In the game's files, there's a similar model, although it had a higher polygon count and higher resolution textures. This higher quality model most likely went unused to save memory on the PS2, as it was limited. A file called anime_test has a plain texture of a wall with a cutout of a door. The file anime_test.back has a similar looking plain texture model of the wall, although with a checkered pattern. The file bg_tes has a black cube with a single texture of subway doors in the middle. The files Dekoboko and Dekoboko2 have flat plain texture models with shapes located on each respective model. The file HIGE_lip or huge_lip shows a model of Mary Shepard Sunderland from Silent Hill 2, although this model shows Mary with facial hair matching that of Douglas's facial hair. This was likely used to experiment with the face model's animations, more specifically, the facial hair. The file test_chdcc has an unused model of Douglas's head. This contains the base of the model, starting from the neck up to the forehead. The file test_wave has a flat texture of Douglas's face model that morphs the face into that of a wave shape. The monster enemy, Closer, had an unused animation that would have seen it climbing from a floor at a lower level to an upper level. In the boss fight with Memory of Alessa, this would have had Memory of Alessa have an idle animation where she is sitting on a horse to then dismount it. Heather had 2 unused animations where she initially had the option to look behind her left and right, to then move her head up, left, down, and right. An unused track that is a remix of the track Results from Silent Hill 1 is repurposed here, but would go unused. This unused track would have likely been purposed for the Results theme in Silent Hill 3, but later scrapped. On the 3rd floor of the Hilltop Center, there was an 80% chance the player could experience a sequence where they heard a baby crying. However, this disturbing audio would go unused. One of the biggest mysteries regarding Silent Hill 4 is undoubtedly the absence of a UFO ending. Previously, Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2, and Silent Hill 3 all had specific requirements to unlock the UFO ending. However, this continuation of the UFO ending would oddly not appear as one of the unlockable endings in Silent Hill 4. As to why the UFO ending didn't make the cut, it's unknown and has never been commented on by the studio, Team Silent, when it came to questions regarding the matter. However, one could assume that this was due to time constraints during development, resulting in the idea being scrapped. This can be supported with the unused items found in the PC files of Silent Hill 4, which contain 4 items: the channeling stone, the dirty stone, the courtyard key, and finally, the red oil. The dirty stone is actually the channeling stone. Only when Henry, the main protagonist of Silent Hill 4, washes the dirty stone, it will then result in the channeling stone. The courtyard key has a description that reads, "An old-fashioned key. 4S churchyard has been carved on it." The red oil has a description that reads, "A special balm for exorcism. If thrown on the ground, a large area will be exorcised." As to what the purpose of these 4 items would be used for specifically, it's clear that it would be directly towards unlocking the UFO ending. Initially, the courtyard key would be the only item to have a rendered model out of all the other 4 items, which were item textures. That would be until recently, YouTube user Rodolfo Nunez made a very informative video on all the research we've known so far regarding the UFO ending. Upon his findings, he found that there isn't 1 channeling stone, but actually 5 channeling stones with a full 3D render model. Furthermore, he also discovered a mysterious table with 5 holes that look similar to the outline of the channeling stone. In theory, the player would have to put these 5 channeling stones into the mysterious table to trigger an event. Unfortunately, even if this action is committed, there isn't a program UFO ending in the game files. In the file, ANM_test.bin exists an earlier model of Henry Townsend with a different design. In this earlier beta model, Henry had a less detailed and unfinished design to his facial features, a brown jacket with a green undershirt, and finally, wearing a belt. Interestingly, it's possible to play as this earlier player model of Henry Townsend through model swapping. In the game files, there are unused models with animations that are placed in areas while ascending the staircase that show unused models of animations depicting very grotesque and disturbing imagery. These unused models show 2 naked women. One model is shown with scissors cutting open the other model's pregnant belly. The other model, receiving the scissors to her pregnant belly, has an appendage-like tongue sticking out of her mouth as she is screaming in pain. These unused models are seen in a sitting position across each other with an animation of both of them eating food at a dinner table. It depicts a male and a female model that could possibly allude to Walter Sullivan's parents. When Walter was only a baby, his parents abandoned him. This imagery here gives implication to their life without Walter. This unused model of a woman is seen in a fetal position with both of her arms held above her head, assuming that she is tied up and desperately escaping her confinement. This unused model was seen bending over on his knees to where he has his hands held up in the air, motioning as if he is pressing on the walls around him. This unused model of a pregnant woman shows her lying on her back with an animation showing her struggling and trying to breathe, while her belly shows 2 baby hands popping out. This unused model has a baby wrapped in bandages, while the other model is shaking the baby violently. Finally, this unused model of a nurse is shown with a knife cutting open the womb of a pregnant woman. Oddly enough, in the game's files, there is a file called em_test.bin. There exist 2 image textures of characters from an adult visual novel called Moikan. These 2 image files are never used in-game, however, they do have bitmaps. Upon returning to room 302, Henry has the option to interact with a peephole that is carved into the side of his wall. This peephole allows Henry to spy on Eileen as she goes about her day-to-day life. This unused animation of Eileen shows her eating food, vocalizing moaning sounds of her eating. In this unused animation, it shows her stretching and doing physical exercises. The next unused animation shows Eileen undressing her clothing, although she doesn't actually take off her clothes, just simulates the motion. Finally, this unused animation of Eileen shows her assumingly possessed by one of the many hauntings that appear throughout the game. Here, she is seen shaking her head violently as she manipulates her eyes to look around, while screaming in pain as she is looking directly at Henry. In the game's files, there exists an unused test room of what appears to be one of the prison rooms from the water prison. The 3D model textures are very unfinished and unpolished. This water prison test room has only a white, rough texture of the room itself, along with a toilet, a sink, a bed, and seating areas across the room. The file IWA_test stage has a model of a test room that is an earlier version of the apartment world. It contains early model textures of the exterior and interior of the apartment world floors. The file event_RL03_L.bin contains an unused event of the Hail of the Sun symbol. By replacing one of the memos found in Henry's closet, an event triggers the Hail of the Sun symbol to appear with a blue translucent light, highlighting the symbol in an image texture. Much recently, there was an unused cutscene that was found that shows Henry in an empty black void where he is seen standing calling out to Eileen as she calls his name. Henry then looks around him to then result in sighing in distress, saying, "Where did you go now?" Finally, Henry then takes a step to assumingly a hole where Eileen called his name, that then has the camera shift towards the empty black void.
Eileen. Where'd you go now?
Back in 2004, after the release of Silent Hill 4: The Room, Masashi Sumbayama, the director and designer of formerly Team Silent, would announce the development had begun on Silent Hill 5. Initially, rumors about Silent Hill 5 would be addressed as quote-unquote shadows, but Sumbayama would deny these rumors as mere speculation. In an interview with GameWorld, Imamura said he and the team wanted a strong 5th installment because of the underwhelming response to Silent Hill 4. Silent Hill 4 would meet mixed reception due to not following the same gameplay style as prior entries. This would inspire the team to double down and focus on less melee combat and a more dramatic otherworld that takes advantage of PlayStation 3 generation consoles. In the same interview, Akira Yamaoka, series composer, stated that the plot of Silent Hill 5 would have focused on a damaged human being, summoned to Silent Hill Main, for a specific reason. Described as the, quote, darkest story we have come up with, Imamura would add to this darker theme by stating some things would have to be cut to get past the rating system. As opposed to the previous games in the series, Silent Hill 5 would have started in Silent Hill as an everyday town with people going about their daily lives, which would slowly rot away as the game progresses. This would incorporate a real-time gameplay mechanic that Team Silent would deem as daylight horror, through a creepy sunny other world, playing with this idea of how light interacts with darkness rather than the previously seen horror element of the fog the series is known for. Silent Hill 5 would have involved members of Team Silent, including Masashi Sumbayama, Akihiro Imamura, and Akira Yamaoka. Oddly enough, Konami ordered Team Silent to develop a game with a similar design to Grand Theft Auto. This, however, would fall through and be cancelled in 2006. Masahiro Ito, the lead art director, clarified that the project was not a horror title and did not include monsters or creatures. At this point in time, Ito became exhausted of horror after his extensive work on the second and third Silent Hill games, and left Konami in March 2006. In 2006, Climax Studios began working on a pitch for a PlayStation 3 exclusive Silent Hill game known as Broken Covenant. The plot would have focused on Alessa Gillespie's influence spreading outside of the town of Silent Hill, Maine, with the protagonist, Father Hector Santos, traveling from El Paso, Texas, to Arizona to help his niece Anna. In a gameplay demo presentation for Broken Covenant, we see the player model of Travis Grady to showcase the demo. In this demo, we see one of the unique gameplay features of the Arizona town beginning to change and shift at different time intervals, as it slowly becomes corrupted by Alessa's memories. Silent Hill locations from different periods throughout its history would become a physical manifestation and materialize across the American Southwest. Members of the cult, the Order, had relocated to Arizona, operating in an abandoned military base outside of Coyote Flats, believing that Anna was the next Alessa. One of Father Santos' main gameplay mechanics would be the ability to perform holy rituals, with water as one of the key items to purify environments. Creatures would have included demon nurses, miners, mumblers, cockroaches, moths, bees, and at one point even Pyramid Head. Gameplay elements in the pitch included puzzles, stealth, over-the-shoulder camera angles, action sequences, and vehicle exploration. However, Konami later rejected the pitch. In 2006, WayForward Technologies initially developed a pitch demo of a Silent Hill title for the Nintendo DS. In a Twitch livestream, they presented a one-room tech demo using assets from Silent Hill 2. Most notably, James Sunderland is the basis for showcasing the gameplay mechanics, the environment, and the overall presentation of Silent Hill. Looking at the gameplay would see the player moving and interacting with the environment on the top half of the DS screen, while the bottom half would feature the inventory screen. Although the pitch failed to get Konami's attention, Konami later approached WayForward to develop a portable Silent Hill for the PlayStation Vita. This would be Silent Hill Book of Memories. While on the topic of the Nintendo DS, Dementium the Ward was originally pitched as a Silent Hill game for the DS by now defunct developer Renegade Kid. In an interview with IGN, Renegade Kid co-founder Jules Watsham states that while Konami rejected this pitch, Konami wasn't entirely dismissive of the idea they had envisioned for the concept of a Silent Hill on the DS, but rather, Konami thought it was a bad business decision to have a horror game on the DS at the time. There are images of this pitch demo showing a player character, seemingly a SWAT member, holding a nightstick as a weapon while roaming an asylum with various prisoners strapped to a bed. In 2006, Silicon Knights developed a pitch for a Silent Hill game titled The Box for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, dubbed in Open World Third-Person Survival Horror Experience. At some point, the project was abandoned by Sega and later picked up by THQ and renamed The Ritualist. However, due to financial difficulties at THQ in 2009, the game never materialized and was cancelled. There are some concept images of the box art, main menu, customization settings, different bird species, and finally, hatchets. In 2013, Masahiro Ito was involved in a cancelled Silent Hill title. Due to non-disclosure agreements, information about the development detailing the game is limited. He describes the project as a direct sequel, similar to the likes of Silent Hill 3 to Silent Hill 1. Because of Pyramid Head's popularity as a mascot figure for the Silent Hill franchise, Konami would commission Masahiro Ito to reuse Pyramid Head, much to his disliking of reusing Pyramid Head. He explains he designed Pyramid Head specifically as a manifestation of James Sunderland's inner psyche, becoming displeased with Pyramid Head in later entries. Masahiro Ito states that if Pyramid Head were to be used, Ito wanted him to have an impressive new direction that players would accept. He would design brand new iterations of Valtiel and Pyramid Head that were distinct from what we have seen previously in Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3. He intended for Valtiel to kill Pyramid Head in the game's opening cutscene. Concept art would see the opening cutscene depict a baby carriage on a bridge in the Otherworld. However, this untitled Silent Hill sequel would later be cancelled. In 2017, when asked if he would be willing to return to make a feature Silent Hill installment, Masahiro Ito stated that he would be willing to make a new Silent Hill if Pyramid Head is not in it or can be killed early in the game, and if it is not a direct sequel to an earlier installment. To preface, Silent Hill Origins was originally undergoing the development title Silent Hill Original Sin. This was developed initially by Climax Studio, a studio branch that was located in Santa Monica, California, also known as Climax LA. However, with a significant amount of pressure, this led to major problems with the game engine and lack of vision, which resulted in this version of Silent Hill Original Sin being cancelled. Due to this, the development would be shifted to a Climax Studio branch in the United Kingdom led by Sam Barlow. This would go on to be finalized as Silent Hill Origins. While the development is quite dismaying and stressful, to say the least, what is particularly fascinating about the original Silent Hill Origins led by Climax LA is the amount of unused concepts, cut designs, and scrapped ideas that wouldn't make it into the final version. The Afflicted is an unused monster that appears in the August 26 Silent Hill Origin prototype build, first used as an early prototype concept demo, showcasing features, designs, and the atmosphere of the game. In this demo, we can see that the Afflicted was a common enemy that would have appeared in many locations throughout the game, such as roaming the streets of the town, and inside the halls of the asylum. The Afflicted would have a very basic animation when it comes to their movement, seen as slow when walking towards Travis. They also have a simple swipe animation when dealing damage with their claws. They also make zombie-like moans and screams upon interacting with them or killing them. The Piercer was initially supposed to be a boss at some point in the game. The body of the Piercer resembles the anatomy of a scorpion, honing 4 sharp tendrils with blades as its weapons. As you can see, there's a rendered 3D model of the Piercer, committing an attack animation with both its tendril-like blades from the top to attack the player. The wheelchair monster is self-explanatory. It's a monster that has its lower torso attached to the seat of a wheelchair, having to move around using both its arms to drag the wheelchair behind it. The miner had the appearance of a typical miner outfit, donning overalls around its body, wearing a gas mask on its face, and its arms are manipulated into that of a weapon with 2 pickaxes. Interestingly, there's a rendered 3D model of the miner, but it has a different appearance entirely. The miner wears a black leather suit with a gray vest, and a gas mask that is worn over its head. The weapon of choice this time around is a nightstick, as opposed to pickaxes. The miner has an attack animation where it swings its nightstick for a long-ranged attack. One animation shows the miner receiving a bit of damage when it stumbles upon getting hit in the face. The next animation shows the miner receiving damage to its kneecap, where it then proceeds to touch it upon getting hit. Finally, an animation shows the miner getting flung backwards by a strong force, falling on its back, and then proceeding to get back up. The meat is an enemy with a split open meat carcass that has both hooks on its top of its model, presumably as weapons to attack the player, and down the bottom for its feet. The only footage we see of the meat is in a short glimpse in the 2006 E3 trailer, where it's hanging on a hook while it convulses. There is concept art of an unused monster called the Undead Bellhop. It takes much of its attire from that of a bellhop, who typically works at a theater. However, the bellhop seen here is very zombie-like, with much of its skin decaying and flesh rotting. An unused enemy of a mannequin has a very abstract quality to its proportions, as much of its limbs and torso are manipulated, notably with pink vein-like skin surrounding its body. The Caliban initially had 2 earlier concept designs. The first concept design shows a heavily contorted body with a snake-like tail, multiple heads, and a sickle attached to its right foot. The next design looks similar to an Eldritch horror monster, given its horns at the top of its head and beast-like quality. The final concept design is of the previous design, although with a front profile picture of the Caliban's face with a more detailed design to its appearance. The Sad Daddy has two earlier designs. The first design is very hard to depict as to what exactly it could be, appearance-wise, but it has an emphasis on sharp knives. The next design of the Sad Daddy has a more skinny build to its design. The head is laid on its side while it screams in pain. The straight jacket had an earlier design where the back of the body was attached to a hospital bed, presumably using its hands to move itself around, given its lack of mobility. The Floros initially had an early concept art where it would have its own boss fight, taking the form of aquatic Floros, taking place on some sort of altar where you can see imagery of the Floros and the Hail of the Sun symbols intertwined on the floor. A glass pyramid-shaped contraption would have a spherical device in the center. There are concept designs of what looks like to be the Floros manipulated into the form of a worm-like monster. An unused cutscene of Travis meeting Michael Kaufman has Travis question Michael about the weird disappearances of the townspeople and the monsters that have spread throughout Silent Hill. This results in Kaufman dismissing Travis's concerns by highlighting the events that are possible through a scientific explanation, which has Travis baffled in return by Kaufman's remark about the town.
You must be lost. Silent Hill lures in outsiders from time to time.
What the hell's happening to this town, Doc?
Nothing conclusive, but I have my theories. Mass hysteria, poison in the water, quantum phenomena. Take your pick.
Huh? Look around you. You're saying there's a scientific explanation for all of this?
I'm not saying anything.
Well, that's not a very good answer.
Then stop asking questions.
Okay. Well, glad we got a man of science watching our backs. Take it easy, Doc.
In the prototype, there is a cutscene that shows Travis awakening on a hospital bed in a dimly lit room with a large mirror beside him. Inside this mirror shows a woman with a gown that Travis has met previously. He then asks the woman how to escape the town of Silent Hill and begs her for her help. This results in her drawing two triangles as a cryptic message on what he should do next.
Why do you keep bringing me back here? I just want to get as far away from this town as possible. Can you make that happen? If I help you, can you get me back to my truck? Here we go again. Okay, I get it. Two more.
An early introduction cutscene shows an early mock-up animation of Travis traveling down the highway to Silent Hill, to then abruptly stop his truck and find a mysteriously cloaked figure named Mr. Twilight, initially one of the overarching antagonists in the story, whose use would later be scrapped entirely. From what little information we can gather, Mr. Twilight would be orchestrating the events of Silent Hill Origins behind the scenes, whilst Travis would have to subsequently try to pursue and stop him. Mr. Twilight wears a black cloak and has two white masks. A pre-rendered cinematic trailer leaked back in 2006, which is when Silent Hill Origins would be shown to the public. The camera would have a panoramic view of the interior itself, to then show Travis looking at himself in the mirror, resulting in him sighing and taking a deep breath, a homage that takes influence from the opening of Silent Hill 2. An unused animation of Travis equipped with a cut weapon, the crossbow, shows him reloading the weapon with another arrow and then fire. An unused animation of an early render of the butcher and Travis shows Travis pinned down and struggling to evade the butcher's knife. This then leaves Travis getting brutally impaled in half, presumably as one of the death animations that was scrapped. The other unused animation shows the same series of events. Travis successfully evades the knife by kicking the butcher. Travis had an early model that was directly influenced after Norman Reedus, likely intended as a placeholder before the final conceptualization of Travis Grady. An unreleased PSP prototype demo developed by Climax Solent shows an early build of Silent Hill Origins with a completely different gameplay style than what we are normally accustomed to. In this early build, we have a third-person, over-the-shoulder camera view of Travis, equipped with both a magnum and a sledgehammer. Travis explores the butcher's lair to eventually stumble upon the butcher himself, which then results in a boss fight. Further along the demo, Travis will then encounter many early models of the straitjacket enemy. An unreleased prototype build for the PSP version shown at Leipzig Gamescom back in 2006 features two playable demos, Town and Asylum. In the Town, you can simply explore the early version of Silent Hill. You are only equipped with the Magnum and the Sledgehammer to kill the afflicted enemies you find throughout the area. However, there is not much else to do here. The next demo, Asylum, features much more complexity to its gameplay, with the need to find items throughout the asylum to escape. Much of this is backtracking throughout the building and finding out the afflicted with the Magnum and Sledgehammer. It's a mystery to this day as to what could have been the sequel that was Team Silent's Silent Hill 5. There is not too much information regarding the original development and plans that Team Silent had in mind, albeit with a couple of interviews with Akihiro Imamura and Akira Yamaoka. According to them, Team Silent's original direction of Silent Hill 5 wanted to incorporate a true return to their psychological horror gameplay roots, yet capture a different atmosphere. That would be a departure from the foggy town you roam and explore in. Rather, the idea was to explore the town of Silent Hill as the everyday person, in a bright, sunny environment. However, the more you stay in the town, the more it slowly deteriorates over time. As Akihiro Imamura puts it, ever since the pre-production of Silent Hill 2, we wanted to start a Silent Hill in a normal environment. Daylight, people going about their business, just normality. What happens when you make that normality rot all around you? Is it possible to make a normal sunny day really creepy? A concept that was undoubtedly bold and ambitious for the series, but nevertheless, an idea worth seeing through. However, any relevancy or known information regarding this Silent Hill 5 that Team Silent would have developed would be lost and cancelled. Team Silent would disband, and eventually, Konami would give the rights of the Silent Hill franchise to Western developers. Even though Silent Hill 5 was initially scrapped, these original plans would later be repurposed for the eventual release of Silent Hill Homecoming. Silent Hill Homecoming has been widely known to have a mixed reception from many fans and players alike, with its questionable gameplay mechanics, inconsistencies in the lore of Silent Hill, and bug/issues. This is nothing new. However, what isn't widely known is that Silent Hill Homecoming was initially, at one point, supposed to be repurposed as Silent Hill 5. At E3 2007, there was a small teaser trailer showing the aforementioned cloudy fog. That was a narration from Alex Shepard, the main protagonist of Silent Hill Homecoming. However, it's very noticeable that there is a different voice actor here instead of Brain Bloom, the voice of Alex Shepard. In this teaser trailer, the narrator can be heard saying the following: "They say war is hell, but there are worse things. War changes you, and nobody back home could ever understand. They never understood me. They say you can't go home again, but they're wrong. I just don't want to." After the narration, it then fades to the Halo of the Sun logo, with a title that states Silent Hill 5. After this teaser trailer, any further mention of Silent Hill 5 is also seen in game magazine articles, such as Eurogamer, where it further elaborates on the plot, the horror atmosphere, and the gameplay that is a noticeable departure from the previous entries. However, the main topic of interest that captured my attention concerning Double Helix early iteration of Silent Hill 5 is their early concept artwork. To be more specific, user interface and identity design. In these early artworks of Silent Hill 5, we can find lots of concept art of different ideas of how the main menu, the pause menu, and the inventory system would have possibly looked like. For starters, the main menu design looks very ominous and mysterious, having images that show faces that are obscured and hard to see, possibly that of Alex Shepard. We also see two logos, Silent Hill Flesh plus Blood, and Silent Hill 5. The next image shows a close-up of the aforementioned faces, with a better look at their detail, along with the Silent Hill Flesh plus Blood logo. This image shows a hospital room with maggots and flies shown all over the image of a red hue in the background. We also get the text that reads, Combat Difficulty Nightmare, Puzzle Difficulty Detective, and Start New Game. We also get the same image once again, albeit with a better look at the hospital room, without the emphasis on red and the insects on the screen. Seemingly, we once again get the same image of the hospital room from before, although this time it is torn from the bottom half, now featuring a compilation of images that are hard to decipher and make out, as it is blurred or layered over each other. However, we can see the same difficulty options, the name Patient 7, and what appears to be a woman with bloodstains and a stitched mouth on the right of the image. In this image, we see a dark and foggy landscape that is possibly in a forest setting, with the most notable quality being the silhouette of a tree that outlines the dark figure of a woman in the middle. A nice attention to detail is the bottom half of the image, which shows dark crimson veins that are supposed to be roots of the tree. The tree seems to be a recurring theme throughout these concept art images, as it appears consecutively, such as in this artwork with the same idea, although the tree is red and looks more normal. The background appears to be in a dark room, possibly an insane asylum, with creepy looking doll-like figures on both sides of the image. Silent Hill, Flesh plus Blood is once again seen as the title. This image shows a better look at the woman above with stitches across her mouth and bloodstains on her skin. The top right of the image shows another woman with dark black hair with her face obscured. The top left of the image shows an apartment building with a children's slide. The Silent Hill Flesh plus Blood logo has a different design this time. Next is the user interface, more specifically the in-game UI design, which would associate Alex Shepard's health bar and inventory while in combat. The first image shows Alex Shepard with the knife he carries as his main melee weapon throughout the game, standing in the foggy setting that appears to be a cemetery. We see assumingly his health bar on the left. Interestingly, we see more variations of this health gauge. The top half has the same health gauge meter design, although the red appears to have different styles. The bottom half shows seemingly a heart that shows red veins filling the gauge. Finally, we have a couple more designs of the health bar, although this time it has more of a minimalist design. Up next is the weapon wheel. This design shows black silhouettes of Alex's firearms and melee weapons that allows you the option to set your favorite with the A button. To the right, it shows scissors and a health pack. Finally, the bottom left shows the quantity of ammo that is left for the said weapon of your choosing. The next image shows the same silhouettes of the items, although the weapon wheel is gone and instead on the top center of the screen. It also displays the message, press like crazy with the A button, with messages on the bottom that possibly would have been a tutorial for how the inventory system works. The next image shows a better look at the weapon wheel, with images that display Alex's weapons, such as the handgun, combat knife, shotgun, and pipe. The scissors and health pack are also present in the weapon wheel. The following concept images are the same UI interface of the inventory screen, although it has different shades of light that highlight the items to indicate to the player the items they have in their inventory, as well as bloodstains, seemingly with the same purpose. The next design shows a different style of the weapon wheel, this time with the tree in the middle seen previously and the halo of the sun in the background with the color red. Once again, the health items are now grouped with the weapons. The same design is seen once again, although the colors are inverted and instead black and white. This design shows Alex in what appears to be the attic of the Shepard estate. The weapon wheel has a different style with a cracked screen that sections off each item. The same design can be seen here, although the weapons are more emphasized to the player. The next design is relatively the same, but the halo of the sun makes an appearance once again as the background, along with the color red being prevalent once again. We have our first look at what potentially could have been the pause menu screen. What stands out to me the most is the ability to restart the mission, as I previously don't recall any Silent Hill game before Homecoming to incorporate such an option. We have another design for the inventory, this time for miscellaneous items that could potentially be for puzzles. We see a lamp, a doll, a notebook, a key, and barbed wire. And finally, we have different designs of the logo. What seems to be prominent amongst all of the logo designs for Silent Hill 5 is specifically the Roman numeral for 5 itself. Regarding any other early concept art, information, or really anything I could find for Silent Hill 5, the trail goes cold and ends here. As we all know, at some point during development, Double Helix would shift from the title of Silent Hill 5 and undergo the official title, Silent Hill Homecoming. One thing I find interesting to know is what Kenzie Lamar, lead artist for monster and character designer, has to say regarding the cancellation of Silent Hill 5 and the shift to instead make Silent Hill Homecoming. He states the following: "Just remember, and never forget, that if you don't like the direction where Silent Hill went, the only people you can blame are Konami themselves. They are the ones who canned Team Silent and wanted someone else to make the games, and Konami wanted the games to be different. That's why Team Silent was disbanded. They have been losing faith in the franchise for years, and to further prove what I'm saying, they made an arcade-style Silent Hill shoot-'em-up gun game. How Silent Hill is that?" Kenzie Lamar proceeds to add on to the statement, saying, "I just wish they had given the American team the game before they decided to change everything. Most people just assumed the American team was to blame for all the changes, when the reality is that it was Konami who wanted the changes. Team Silent was making a Silent Hill 5, and it got canned in favor of what ended up being done." Before the launch of Silent Hill Homecoming, there was an early beta build developed in May 2008 for the public to play at press conferences to experience a small glimpse of gameplay. In this beta build, there are very small minor differences compared to the final version, but there are still interesting talking points worth noting. For one, the beta build contains two levels, M02_SG Town 1 and M03_Alex 1. Mission 2 is the small segment where Alex first arrives in Shepherd's Glen to meet and talk with Judge Holloway, to then travel the streets of Shepherd's Glen to his family estate. Mission 3 is where Alex can explore the interior of the Shepherd family home. In the beta build, Alex has a minor difference when it comes to his haircut, where it's much more clean-shaven and groomed, in comparison to his final haircut, which is a faux hawk. In the beta build, Judge Holloway has minor differences to her haircut, which is much shorter in style, in comparison to her final haircut, which is longer and tied up in a bun. While on the topic of early designs, Elle Holloway, the sister of Judge Holloway, originally had a short pixie haircut, in comparison to her final design, which had her with longer hair and a ponytail. An early video trailer promoting the release of Silent Hill Homecoming showed a different time of day that was in the afternoon rather than the evening as seen here with Alex roaming the streets of Shepherd's Glen. The main protagonist, Alex Shepard, initially had two different voice actors before his main voice actor, Brian Bloom, landed the role for him. A cutscene of the beta shows a different voice actor, whose name is unknown, voicing Alex in the cutscene here with Elle and Deputy Wheeler.
I'm sorry.
What are you sorry for? This isn't your fault.
No. About earlier today. The flyers.
Forget it. I should apologize. It's just... this place brings back bad memories for me.
Nolan North initially intended to voice Alex Shepard during the early stages of development, but passed on the role later down the line. Here are a couple of dialogue lines that are voiced by Nolan North.
What am I doing here? This statue, she looks like she's supposed to be holding something. These graves are old. They go back to the Civil War. They're all from Dr. Fitch's family. That's what was missing. The doctor's lantern. I need to remember where I am. I better remember all this, in case I come back here.
Interestingly, Nolan North would have also voiced the Hunter, but this would be scrapped entirely. The Hunter would go on to be Travis Grady. There's an unused animation where Alex finds the pipe weapon in the basement of the Shepherd's estate, where he tears the pipe and emotes with a liking to it. There are unused monster designs for water-based enemies that didn't make it into the final version. This unused monster appears to be sitting crisscrossed patiently with long black hair. This unused monster is shown to be tied up by its tentacles with knives implanted into the ground. This unused monster is also tied to the ground by weights which are tied to its legs to prevent it from escaping. This unused monster is also tied to the ground by weights, although shown to have spikes protruding out of its body. This unused monster has an appearance that looks like a little girl who can levitate a heart with her hand. This unused monster is shown standing tall with long black hair with a rope tied around its legs and arms. This concept design is a closer look into one of the previously seen water-based enemies, but with a much more detail in its artwork. This unused monster is shown to have bones and small bits of flesh throughout its body as it's being tied down to the ground by a weight. Another concept design of the previously seen water-based monsters show a closer detailed look at an enemy with a naked body, squid-like tentacles, and a heart at the top of its head. This unused monster is a worm-like enemy with a long tongue. It's shown to have small babies that look similar in appearance. This unused monster looks similar to the swarm monster seen in the final version, possibly intended as an earlier design or another variant of the swarm. This unused monster has a worm-like appearance with numerous mouths spread throughout its body, along with arms protruding out of its mouth. This unused monster has 2 conjoined heads with 2 mouths and a body with multiple legs. This unused monster looks similar to the previously seen monster, although with a different variation. This unused monster shows a gluttonous-like enemy with different forms. The first form shows it to be in a pacifist state. Next, shows a huge wound in its stomach torn open. And finally, a worm-like appendage popped out of its chest. This unused monster looks similar to the feral, albeit possibly an earlier design or a variation that was considered but scrapped. This unused monster looks to be an earlier version of the Needler or another variation, considering its sharp tendril-like features that bear similarity. Finally, we have an unused design of the Order Soldier. This appearance shows the Order Soldier without a gas mask and instead a sheet of clothing covering its face. Unused audio of a conversation between Alex Shepard and Judge Holloway called M14 Layer was used as an alternative intro. In this audio, Alex is angry and infuriated with Judge Holloway for her coercing the events behind Shepard's Glen, which results in her giving her side of the rebuttal.
I saved your life!
I didn't need saving. I needed to lure you in. I needed you to die. But Nora's locket, that was a surprise. And you saved me from that. So I suppose I should thank you. Thank you.
Why are you doing this?
I'm doing this to take the life from your body.
How could you do this to me? To Elle?
I want you to know that I don't take pleasure in this, Alex. It's just the way things need to be done. If I don't do it, who could I trust to do it right? Lillian? She was useless. Fitch? Bartlett? They were too weak. You see? There's only me now.
This unused audio is a cut dialogue between Alex and his brother, Joshua, in Mission 1 during the Nightmare Alchemilla Hospital sequence.
Holy shit! What the hell is that? What the hell's happening? Jesus! What just happened? There's nothing left. Oh my god. Where did he take him? Look at all this blood. Josh. Josh, is that you? What are you doing here? Hello? Who's there? I can see you there.
No, you can't. I'm not here.
Joshua? Is that you?
I'm busy. Go away.
This unused audio is of the mayor's own theme song. Presumably, this song is in relation to the mayor of Shepherd's Glen, Sam Bartlett.
I wish all the ladies were bells in a tower, and I'd be a ganger and bang 'em for hours, and roll your leg over, and roll your leg over, and roll your leg over the man on the moon. I wish all the ladies were little white cats, and I'd sweep 'em up like Minnesota fats, and roll your leg over, and roll your leg over.
The hunter had unused missing dialogue between him and Alex at some point in the game. At some point, Alex would have stumbled upon the hunter. The hunter would need his aid for medical supplies. Furthermore, these two possibly would have had a crescendo event where they would have had to defend themselves from the monsters breaking into the safe house.
Get away from here! You open that door, you're a dead man! Get back or I'll shoot!
Don't shoot!
If you're human, you better speak up!
It's me, Alex.
Human enough, I guess. Alex? Didn't expect to see you again.
Are you okay?
Sorry. Look, what I really need are some medical supplies. A suture kit. What do you think?
You don't have one here?
Yeah, no shit! I used her last kit on Frank this morning. Not that it did him any good. Doug Fitch's place is north of here. Through the woods. I'm sure you can find one there. I'll be here. The window! They're coming in through the window! Take cover! Watch the roof! I can hear them up there! Keep your eyes and ears open! They're all around us! What are you, stupid? Do something! Here's some ammo!
4 unused tapes wouldn't be present in the final version of Silent Hill Homecoming. The first tape is of a young Alex pretending to be a talk show host interviewing Joshua.
This is WGLN. booming at you from Shepherd's Glen, playing all the hits. I'm Awesome Alex, here with my good friend Joshua. Josh, say hello.
Hi.
Hey, Josh, tell everyone why you're here today.
I'm here today because I'm gonna sing a new song for you.
Okay, so here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time live on radio, Joshua Shepherd.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll let it dan, but I'll let it da 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 da.
The second tape is of a doctor interviewing a patient named Ethan.
Are you ready, Ethan?
Why don't you tell him to leave you alone?
Now, Ethan, I'm here to help.
He's not here to help. He's here to make fun of you.
This doesn't work unless you talk to me. Do you understand?
You're just another freak to him. A pathetic freak who can't help himself.
Why don't you tell me about what happened yesterday?
Why don't we tell him about the time we ate that woman's face?
I can help you, Ethan, but you have to tell me something.
Like the time that policeman tried to help and then you drained the blood from his heart. That was fun.
The third tape is of two doctors interviewing a patient named Jack.
Okay, Doc, why don't I start this time, okay? I mean, you're always starting with the questions, but it's always the same damn questions you're asking, you know? I mean, why don't we get to talk about something I want to talk about?
All right, Randall. You started off today.
Great, Doc. This is just great. I mean, all you got is what's there on that paper. But all we're gonna get to the bottom of today is my problems. You hear what I'm saying? Just you and me.
This sounds good.
Okay, Jack. Sorry to make you wait. I had to... Oh, I see you started the tape for me. How kind.
No problem, Doctor. Just wanted to help out.
So, what do you want to talk about today?
The usual will be fine. Why don't we start with my mother?
Finally, the fourth tape is of a doctor interviewing a young Walter Sullivan, the main antagonist from Silent Hill 4.
Okay. Do you want to tell me that story again?
I don't know.
Do you want to play a game instead?
Alright. Sure.
Why don't you tell me what you think of when I show you these pictures? Okay? Just tell me whatever you think of.
That's my mommy.
Okay. How about this one?
Uh-huh.
This one is your mommy also?
That's not my mommy.
Is this one your mommy too?
That's not my mommy.
Walter?
That's not my mommy.
Calm down, Walter. Calm down. This is your mommy.
No.
Yes, it is. This is your mommy. This one is only a door. See?
Mommy?
What do you want to tell your mommy?
Why won't you wake up, Mommy?
Is your mommy sleeping, Walter?
Show me your heart. Show me your heart!
Orderly! Orderly!
Before Silent Hill Shattered Memories was even perceived, two initial early concepts were considered, Brahms PD and Silent Hill Cold Heart. After releasing the PSP version of Silent Hill Origins, Konami wanted a follow-up for Origins with another PSP title. However, William Ortel, a producer of Silent Hill at the time, pushed Climax to pitch a new first-person shooter Silent Hill title for the Nintendo Wii. This pitch would be called Brahms PD, a spin-off first-person shooter featuring a psychological profile system where you play as an amnesiac police detective from the Brahms police force looking for her missing partner. This pitch, however, would ultimately be rejected. Because of this would lead to the second pitch, Silent Hill Cold Heart. Cold Heart would be pitched for a new Silent Hill game to be released for the Wii in 2007, developed by Climax Studios. In 2014, the pitch document containing an informational booklet consisting of 7 pages was leaked online. In this document, we see the introduction, gameplay features, puzzle examples, and technical aspects. The introduction would see the story centered around an emotionally unstable college student, Jessica Chambers. Jessica struggled with nightmares and insomnia, leading her to start speaking to a psychiatrist. However, this would still result in her emotional distress and turmoil. After running out of options, she decides to visit her parents to help with her mental distress. While traveling on a snowy evening, she becomes lost in a harsh blizzard and ultimately follows an ambulance closely. This eventually brings her to Silent Hill. While here, she would have experienced the psychological nature of the town, harboring physical manifestations of her inner fears and nightmares. This document contains an in-depth walkthrough of gameplay features, demonstrating the Nintendo Wii's motion controls that would see the player utilizing a flashlight, realistic melee combat, and an interactable environment. The Frozen Otherworld is a hostile environment containing dynamic transitions with a theme of a blizzard-like setting. The gameplay would have heavily capitalized on the psychological horror aspect with the use of a psych profiling, tracking the player's every move. This psychological profile would influence later events within the game. Nintendo Wi-Fi connection would be uniquely used to report real-world weather and used for dramatic effects. Jessica's cell phone would have been uniquely used as a radio of sorts, contacted by friends or foes, which should see the Wii Remote play audio from the speaker to assimilate the experience. Monsters would also be alerted by Jessica's cell phone, as it would radiate sound when monsters are nearby. Character customization would have also been a fundamental gameplay feature that would allow the player to adapt to the harsh weather through survival, such as clothing, food, drinks, barricading, etc. There is also a dedicated walkthrough of exploration and combat for a level within the game called The Lake, suggesting that a build for this level could have existed, though unlikely to resurface. While these all sound very ambitious and conceptually a great premise for a game in the Silent Hill series, it's possible Climax Studios overestimated the technology of the Nintendo Wii with its limitations. This unfortunately led to the cancellation of Silent Hill Cold Heart. However, these gameplay elements would later be repurposed for the release of Silent Hill Shattered Memories, notably reprising gameplay elements such as the Frozen Otherworld, interactable environments, and using a flashlight and cell phone. An unused psychological warning screen can be found in the game files named UI_psychologywarninghis.jpg. In the Wii and PS2 versions, the font size, warning, is used instead of psychology warning, and shows repeated text of warning in the background of the graphic. In the PSP version, the warning text is used for the title, the font size is different, and the warning is used for the graphic in the background. Interestingly, the warning graphic for the PSP version retains the warning background. The file UI_photo_Harry and Cheryl.jpg shows a photo of both Harry Mason and Cheryl Mason, indicating at some point in the game, the player would have received this image on their cell phone, given the prefix UI_photo in the file name. Two unused JPEG files of both the Wii Remote and the cell phone can be found in the game files. These unused graphics show respectively a Wii Remote and Harry's cell phone, likely intended as UI graphics for a tutorial prompt in the game. There is also an unused graphic of a close-up of Harry Mason on his cell phone. The file PR_painting_outline_ID map is an unused texture of a crude painting depicting a car with a two-story house and a couple, likely intended as an early texture for one of the therapy session exercises. The file shsm_OOB/fx_def_cards_003.png is an unused texture of a tarot card for the fourth therapy session, depicting a sad man slouched on a chair. The file shsm_OOB_PR_PSY_tat_card_back.png is an unused texture of the back of a tarot card that has a disclaimer with a warning that reads, "This card is intended for psychological use only by trained psychologists." It should be well noted that the use of this card is dangerous and may lead to serious card-related issues. Due to its inherent danger, it should therefore be used on nobody. An unused model of young Cheryl Mason was intended to be used in cutscenes throughout the game, which can be found in the game files. The model of Harry's cell phone when he receives a call during cutscenes or when the gameplay shifts from a first-person perspective into a third-person perspective has an earlier render of the cell phone model in the game files. The early model bears a resemblance to the concept art of the cell phone. The unused song, afx_explore.snd in the PS2 and PSP versions, is loosely repurposed from the song Tribal Cursed from Silent Hill Origins. the unused song, AFX_DRK.SND in the PS2 and PSP version, is remixed from the song Deep Thoughts from Silent Hill Origins. The unused song, AFX_DRK.MUS, was initially used in an E3 walkthrough during the first therapy session of Dr. Kaufman. However, this would go unused in the final game. In the files of the PSP version, unused raw transitions of the woods section into the frozen otherworld transition and then into the normal world transition can be found. On the official Facebook page of Climax Studios' account shares multiple early Rorschach concept artworks with the developer's commentary on each concept artwork, detailing in retrospect the development behind each Rorschach. These represent a very early attempt to visualize some of the narrative themes and embody them through the enemy design. Unfortunately, these portrayed a very literal translation of the opening car crash sequence as opposed to exploring the underlying themes that ran throughout the narrative. The direction was subsequently pivoted towards a concept with roots more familiar to what you see in the game now. A neutrally aligned Rorschach enemy was required as a starting point, the point of introduction, a point before enough personal psych data has been collated in order to align the enemy of your playthrough. This image shows the neutral psyche, but with the first stages of bias, in this case, disease. Continuing the disease and tumor theme, these sketches form some of the early rounds of concepts. We moved away from some of the traditional staples of horror seen here, and focused more on an interpretation of the narrative thread. It is no one's fault. Harry and Dahlia have simply drifted apart. They are now trapped in a dying relationship, but each is unwilling to acknowledge it. It was Harry's fault. Harry is a drunk/addict. Every aspect of his life is mired by his addiction. Rather than being a loving husband/father, he is a drunk. The schema of green wine bottles, absinthe, queasiness, yellow of whiskey, vomit, and liver disease formed the backdrop to your narrative, whereas in the Frozen Nightmare, you were harassed by a vision of disease and tumors. It was Harry's fault. Harry is a serial adulterer and is sexually immoral. His affairs are harmful to his family and to the women he has with them. In turn, the Frozen Nightmare manifests itself appropriately. A behind-the-scenes video captured by the game's director and producer, Sam Barlow, documents a video of motion capture actors rehearsing for a music video of one of the Silent Hill Shattered Memories soundtrack songs, Always in My Mind. According to Sam Barlow, this music video for Always in My Mind would be unreleased to the public, with this being the only known footage to date. In the game files, two placeholder graphics were used as an early design for the title of Silent Hill Downpour. Earlier on in development, the pending title was Silent Hill Downfall. Some MIP maps have extra resources that show a list of extra collectibles that display potential items that could have been collected throughout gameplay. The text highlighted in red reads, Gold Frog, with there only being one available to collect. A graphic of a home key that is covered in bloodstains acted as a placeholder for one of the keys you collect at some point in-game. A graphic that is intended as a placeholder for presumably one of the advertisements in-game depicts a man named Rondell Rollins under the alias Feynman, who is wanted for an arrest warrant that rewards someone $50 million, displaying a mugshot of him with hair and without hair. A placeholder image that reads Story Objects in a red font is found in the game files. There are 3 graphics of writing on a chalkboard that have different variations of the letter font. Interestingly, these names in the respective files are labeled under Easy, Middle, and Hard. A poster for one of the arcade games you play at some point shows an unused graphic of an advertisement for the arcade machine, Jailbreak. It reads, Free ticket for kids who beat our escape game. Be free and get a free ticket. Tokens are available at the kiosk. Win and ride. A prototype of the diner map can be found in the game files, alongside many early versions of maps you find throughout the game. Here, we see a very rough minimalist design of the map with an outline of the surrounding area without much detail. Next is an early version of the first floor of the diner map. Then, an early version of the map for the ground basement floor. Up next is an early version of the boiler room in the prison, an early version of Death Row, an early version of the main hallway, an early version of the first floor of the prison yard, and finally, an early version of the second floor of the prison yard. A graphic containing 4 different materials of textures, presumably for the environment, are compiled together in this image. The upper top right of the graphic shows a placeholder image of a person holding flowers. The next graphic shows various materials for the environment, various fonts, torn and ripped up notes, and a black and white photo of presumably Murphy's wife and next to her, his son, Charlie. We also see a mugshot of Murphy with a side profile and a front profile with his prison number. Finally, we get a crude drawing of Murphy and Charlie. The next file shows more unused textures that have a large amount of police badges, miscellaneous objects, and another crude drawing of Murphy and his family. In this file of unused graphics, we see a clock tower, more textures for the environment, and early models of Murphy and his family depicted in a family portrait. Murphy has his prison attire, Charlie with overalls, but weirdly enough, the mother has no final model. Instead, a basic texture of a 3D model. A file that contains unused test materials reads, Die You Sucker. In one of the early prototype builds, there are rough renders of the streets of Silent Hill and the interior of the diner. At the beginning of the game, there would have been a prison riot sequence that ultimately went unused. Inside the file, 01_prn_cells_AI.xxx show many unused images from a prison riot when going into Ryle State Prison. These images depict the police officers dealing with damage control as the prisoners who've escaped are causing a riot throughout the prison, which causes nothing but pure violence and chaos. These images were likely meant to be displayed on TV screens as the file name, screen_riot_0x_PRN_AS_D suggests this. An unused graphic of one of the minor characters seen in game, Homer, interestingly, has a texture of multiple Homers looking directly into the screen ominously. Speaking of the minor character, Homer initially was never meant to have a short role reduced to a side quest, but rather, one of the antagonists in the story. According to Discord users, Dust the Crow and Devil Dwarf explained to me that Homer had an unused model with rough textures that depict him as the ferryman. In this model, we see the ferryman in a raincoat along with a lantern. The file name, ferryman_civil.ai, suggests that ferryman would be in a passive state when talking with Murphy. The files james_head.ai and sybil_head.ai show 2 unused basic textures of face models of what would be James Sunderland and Sybil Bennett. According to Devil Dwarf, both of these face models for James and Sybil would have been displayed in the walls of Devil's Pit. An unused sign of the iconic Silent Hill sign you would find when first entering the town is unused, only with rough textures and a basic 3D model. An early unused 3D model of Officer Sewell can be found in the files. Interestingly, this early version of Officer Sewell pays close attention to detail to his early concept design. An unused 3D model of a scuba diver is found in the game files. However, its purpose or function is unknown. An early unused 3D model of the Screamer with a rough and basic blue texture is found in the game files. Found in the game files are removed items that were potentially considered to be used by Murphy at some point in game, but later scrapped. Here, we see a flashlight, tape recorders, batteries, pocket knife, cable cord, watches, and a remote. Unused monastery items can also be found in the files, which likely would have been used at some point in the St. Maria's Monastery area during gameplay. In the files, there are a lot of unused weapons that would be scrapped and not make it into the final game. In chronological order, these are the following unused weapons: bamboo torch, broken bamboo torch, barrel, cup, broken cup, lamp, spear, broken spear, screwdriver, broken screwdriver, electric kettle, broken electric kettle, dismembered arm from the doll monster, garbage bin, heavy book, juice box, broken juice box, locker, long tree branch, short tree branch, manhole, metal plate, paper cutter, broken paper cutter, scissors, broken scissors, sharp bone, broken sharp bone, small table, tin can, and finally, broken tin can. Furthermore, there are also 2 unused weapon states. The stalker enemy, Boogeyman, has a weapon called the Boogeyman's Hammer that has an unused broken state. Interestingly, the Boogeyman's Hammer is impossible to damage in-game and can never be broken, suggesting earlier on in development, Murphy would have been able to deal damage to the Boogeyman's Hammer. Up next is the police baton that is typically equipped with Officer Sewell. Interestingly, the police baton is not accessible as a weapon to be used by Murphy. In the files, there are unused audio recordings of an unknown British voice actor who voiced some of Murphy's lines, likely intended as a placeholder, until the eventual voice actor for Murphy, David Boyd Conrad, would voice the main protagonist himself.
Okay, man, think. First things first. Find the highway, put some ground between yourself and the bus. Shit, I'll never get up that. Gotta be another way to the highway. Guess you should have stayed put like I told you, stupid bitch.
One of the more fascinating discoveries is the restoration of the unused Monocle Man boss fight. Before the release of Silent Hill Downpour, there was a pre-release trailer accidentally uploaded by Konami that showed the in-game progress of the Monocle Man as a boss fight. However, for over a decade, this would be the only source of reference we ever had. That is, until recently, YouTube user DDK Oswald would upload a video where he went into one of the prototype builds containing the Monocle Man boss fight and restored it to completion. In the boss fight, we see Murphy encounter the Monocle Man himself, where he must avoid his tendril-like arms that deal damage to Murphy. To defeat the Monocle Man, Murphy must activate machines that then reveal cogwheels. These cogwheels are meant to bait the Monocle Man's tendril-like arms into the cogwheels to deal damage to his health. During this, Murphy could be susceptible to a QuickTime event where the player must smash a button prompt to escape the Monocle Man's grasp from dealing further damage to Murphy. Upon consecutive sequences of the events, eventually, Murphy would defeat the Monocle Man to where it vanishes completely. In a message thread on Reset Era, there were leaked images of allegedly Silent Hill 2 Remake by Dusk Golem, a popular leaker who has built quite a reputation for themselves when it comes to video games and leaking documents and information about them. In these images, it shows in-game captures of James Sunderland roaming through different areas of Brookhaven Hospital. In the first image, we see James Sunderland walking through a hallway that is dimly lit and obscures much of his player model. In the next image, James is seen equipped with a wooden plank. As he is equipped, he confronts a bubblehead nurse who comes around from the corner, assumingly dragging a pipe, a weapon the bubblehead nurse is commonly associated with, behind her as she walks forward. The last image that was leaked is James standing in a room with a bunch of files, documents, and notes on a table along with a typewriter. At the time, when users saw these images, it was likely that the legitimacy was very questionable and rightfully had many people speculate if they were real or not. But according to Dusk Golem, they were, in fact, real. Dusk Golem says, they're real, but they're not even close to the final product. These are from an internal pitch demo from Blooper before they got greenlit. So it's literally a no-budget proof of concept thing, rather than a final product. Just keep that in mind. Out of everything that could have leaked, this isn't actually what the final game looks like. Dusk Golem cites more proof of evidence with a leaked document presentation that gives an overview, gameplay features, and prediction of financial earnings/costs of a project for a potential Silent Hill 2 remake. What's interesting about this leaked document, however, is that the 3 images we saw previously would end up being locations that we see in the final version of Silent Hill 2 Remake. If we take a look at the gameplay trailer that was released a month ago on May 31st, we will see the locations that were shown previously, such as this frame where James is walking down the hall with Maria. As James walks slowly on the 2nd floor of Brookhaven Hospital, he witnesses a bubblehead nurse come out from the corner to proceed to walk across the room without noticing him. And finally, the same room where we saw a bunch of documents scattered across the room. As to what would happen to this proof of concept demo, it would most likely be scrapped entirely or repurposed to be used as a basis for the final version of Silent Hill 2 Remake. Now, it would seem like a trail would run cold and end here, but actually, there is a cancelled version of Silent Hill 2 Remake that is more unlikely to be heard of. On the contrary, to having this leaked on a message forum by a leaker, this would shockingly be revealed by Konami themselves. Of all things, on a documentary for Silent Hill, The Short Message, in the segment of the documentary, there's an interview with the developer, Hexadrive, more specifically, the level design director, Rika Miyatani. In this interview, Miyatani goes into detail about her role with The Short Message, saying that she was in charge of creating an outline for the playable sections in the gameplay, giving lots of depth to the creative process of how they come to incorporate such mechanics and systems into the gameplay for the experience they are trying to aim for. The topic of interest, however, comes to the question for Miyatani when asked how she got involved with The Short Message. She reveals that initially, Hexadrive proposed to Konami a potential Silent Hill 2 remake. Beforehand, Konami would reach out to the developer for porting the Silent Hill games onto modern platforms. Naturally, Miyatani and her team were ecstatic about the opportunity but wanted to truly show their potential by developing a mock-up demo. We then get around 40 seconds of in-game footage of Hexadrive's pitch demo for Silent Hill 2 Remake. In this demo, we see the title screen, with the title itself paying tribute to the font of the original along with Letter to Silent Heaven. We then see James walking from the 3rd floor to downstairs. The next shot shows James on the 1st floor, presumably in the lobby of Woodside Apartments. If we pause the frame, we can see that James has his patches, which are not seen in Booper Team's version of James Sunderland. The next frame shows James looking at the map of Woodside Apartments. If we take a look at the floor plan, it shows the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors. It also looks very similar to the floor plan in the original. We then get the gameplay mechanic to inspect James's journal, where we can see that he marked down notes on the 1st floor, along with comments about the rooms or locations he visited. Interestingly, this looks very similar to the gameplay trailer, that also featured James making notes in his journal about what he witnessed in the town of Silent Hill. The next scene shows James walking down a long linear hallway with a fence blocking him from passing through, and with an exit sign seen at the end of the hallway. And finally, before the mock-up demo ends, we see James walking once again into the lobby and picking up a key with bloodstains on it. As to what would become of this project, this would, unfortunately, be cancelled as Konami most likely didn't pursue interest at the time and rejected the pitch. One of the most rewarding and accomplished feelings a player can receive upon consecutive playthroughs is an unlockable that mandates the player to undergo such requirements to meet the criteria. The same can be said with the unlockables in Silent Hill 2 Remake. However, one would come to find that there is a significant lack of a couple of unlockable weapons that were seen in the original Silent Hill 2 that didn't make it into the final game. These weapons would be the Hyperspray and the Great Knife. Because these weapons were cut, with the exception of the Great Knife, which resulted in a scripted gameplay sequence, I want to elaborate a bit more on the function and the use of said weapons for those unaware of the original. The Hyperspray was an item unlocked after completing the game with a specific star ranking that rewarded the player with different Hyperspray colors. These would come in 4 variations: purple, white, yellow, and green. Each variation would result in a different outcome with the damage output it inflicts upon an enemy. The green Hyperspray, for example, instantly kills all enemies and ends every boss fight immediately with a single spray. The drawback, however, results in having a limited quantity to use that can backfire by also inflicting damage on James over time. The irony of the Hyperspray being cut and removed from the remake is technically not true, since you can actually find the model of the Hyperspray in the top stairwell of Woodside Apartments. Unfortunately, this weapon is not possible to unlock after completing the game or with a requirement in mind. The Hyperspray found here is merely just a reference or an Easter egg to the original. The Great Knife was a weapon that was unlocked in the original Silent Hill 2 by exploring the labyrinth in a specific room found in Pyramid Head's lair, which you can acquire by simply interacting with it once found. The Great Knife deals considerably the best weapon damage towards enemies and bosses when it comes to melee attacks. The drawback of this weapon, however, is the lack of mobility as you drag it behind you when equipped, and the slow time frame when omitting an attack animation. The Great Knife, while technically accessible and equipped in Silent Hill 2 Remake, is only for a brief scripted gameplay sequence that mandates the player to bypass the mannequins blocking your progress. After passing the hallway, You are then forced to drop the great knife and cannot equip it again as a weapon. Bullet Adjust was a feature you unlocked after the first playthrough of the main scenario, which rewarded the player a multiplier of custom ability towards bullet quantity for firearms such as the handgun, the shotgun, and the hunting rifle. The bullet adjustment provided the option of multiplying the bullet capacity with ×1, ×2, or ×3. Extra riddle difficulty is the hardest difficulty when regarding the puzzles seen throughout the gameplay. This completely overhauls some of the puzzles with randomized outcomes and vague clues when problem solving for a solution. This is unlocked upon completing puzzle difficulty on easy, normal, and hard. Upon completing the puzzle difficulty on hard, this will then unlock the extra riddle difficulty the next time you start a playthrough. Born from a Wish was a sub-scenario that was accessible from the main menu that you can choose to play after finishing the main scenario, Letter from Silent Heaven. This was included in the expanded edition of Silent Hill 2 and the Restless Dreams for Xbox, Greatest Hits for PS2, or the PC version. In Born from a Wish, you play as Maria, previously seen in the main scenario as a major character in James Sunderland's story. Here, we get a prologue to the events of Letter from Silent Heaven, where we see Maria being birthed in Heaven's Night, from James Sunderland's subconscious desire to wish for an idealized Mary that is seen in Maria. It's here where we see Maria struggle to find a purpose and has existential thoughts of her existence, though continues to seek for a reason to keep on living by traveling to Baldwin Mansion to hopefully find answers there. As far as we are aware, we have not had confirmation in regards to Born from a Wish having its own scenario sometime in the future as DLC, or if it's content that's even considered to be realized and eventually released. Upon accessing the files in the PC version of Silent Hill 2 Remake, there are a couple of very interesting findings when regarding unused content. Early on in development, it appears that there was initially a different version of the save screen that you use via the red squares seen throughout the gameplay. Here, we can see the early version of the save screen showed James's face obscured by the red color filter that looks very similar to the save screen in the original Silent Hill 2. In the final version, however, this would be completely different as it chose to have a real-time save screen that showed an in-game model of James Sunderland. There are a couple of files that have the name Young James Work in Progress that feature facial features of seemingly early stages of a potential younger James Sunderland that would have possibly been de-aged in comparison to the final model we see of James. We do know that at some point in development, James had an overhaul to his character model when it came to the difference in the teaser trailer of Silent Hill 2 Remake back in 2022, in comparison to the final version we received with the released Silent Hill 2 Remake. There's an unused memo that shows what looks like to be a journal entry to the left-hand side of the page, while to the right-hand side, there is a description telling James the location of a car in a back alley with a key. This presumably refers to the car seen in the back alley in Southvale, where you acquired the apartment key for Woodset Apartments. The unused memo titled HOSOW_Director Note 3 is referencing the Brookhaven Hospital Otherworld when you stumble upon the Otherworld version of the director's office. It details a patient on standby for the doctor to make a diagnosis. This unused memo titled ID Badge_01 features a rusted and decayed advertisement of Silent Hill Post Office. The name, Jacob S., appears with a depiction of a mysterious figure faded out by the worn, decayed quality of the paper. We don't have a clue who Jacob S. could be, but this is likely a reference to Jacob Singer, the main protagonist of the psychological horror movie Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's Ladder was one of the main influences on the development of Silent Hill 2. Finally, a huge potential piece of unused content is found in the file titled TrueEnding_Cardioctomy Notes, which could be related to an unlockable ending that was once considered but scrapped entirely, or refer to a story found in the memos that is finalized with this unused memo. As of recently, a YouTube user called The Kempi made a video on Silent Hill 2 Remake that does a comparison with an early beta version of Silent Hill 2 Remake titled Version 1.0 and the final version titled Version 1.3. Version 1.0 shows very significant and minor changes to the cutscenes, audio, and gameplay. A couple of examples when it comes to notable cut content that has been found in version 1.0 is the staircase scene with Angela and James, which shows the presentation of the fire having a brighter and vibrant color. The Abstract Daddy boss fight originally had the flesh walls James is seen traversing have a breathing animation to simulate a physical and sentient quality to Angela's otherworld. Finally, the dog ending had a drastically altered cutscene that played out much differently compared to the final version of the dog ending we see in version 1.3.